So thank you so much, Shauna, for giving us the time and joining to share some great insights. You've had 20 plus years experience running independent business and also corporate world. So there is so much that our audience can learn from you and I can learn from you too. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Any insights or any tips you can share that people can leverage and learn from without, of course, sharing any confidential information?
I think as you asked the question, the word prioritization came to mind. That was like what came very loud and clear. And I think there is always a giant to-do list, and that can be overwhelming, and we can be lured in by the next shiny project or initiative. But it's taking that step, just taking a beat to look at the big picture, look at what we have already on the to-do list, and really deciding, are we working on the most valuable deliverable? And I think it's something I actually do on a daily basis from my own work perspective. And it serves me well, and staying focused on that delivering that top item. And it just helps to focus the energy on delivering something specific and not getting distracted with other things that might pull your attention, whether it's big or whether it could be just those incremental things that happen during the day or the week that might shift the focus of the team or individuals.
Thank you. Like that brings to mind that, prioritization is great. There's a lot of tech debt, but at the same time, if we address it, we don't address or prioritize the business revenue generating features, right? And that's where a lot of stakeholders would want to go. We are doing things in a way which is not very productive. So how do you tackle that?
Well, I think it's really important for unification and alignment. And I mean, we're all not going to be aligned all the time, but across the organization, where I've seen IT, if we're talking, IT, which has been a large piece of my career, it's aligning with the business strategy and needs as well as technology. And there is some give and take that's required, because you have issues that you are going to have to tackle with just simply the technology, upgrading software, or you might have, if we're hosting, there could be challenges there, and or just opportunities to save money and be efficient. So there's balancing that with consistently delivering new value to the business and then ultimately the customers. And so that takes a real partnership and a real, you need to have, if you think of like a product owner, it's somebody that can straddle the whole thing, right? And be able to communicate both ways so that it is understood what the technology demands as well as the business opportunities. So I think the communication is key, and I really see great value in that product owner role. If we kind of lean to like a Scrum or Agile delivery model, it's something I've grown to really appreciate over time. And that could be assumed by a product manager as well, or you might have both. It's just that those roles are pivotal, and having really strong people in those places that can communicate, it just makes it a lot more efficient and ensures that the right things are being delivered.
We do have product owners, product manager roles today, but then there are some companies who are even pivoting away from it, or even now questioning Agile. So it's a good segue into, why product owner roles are important, and how what they bring to the table. What do you think about agile? Like, do you think it leverages and helps to what it sells on? Is it
Mhm.
really that good, or is it just like the new shiny thing and now people are getting over it?
Well, I think it's how it's implemented. So it's really
Mm,
interesting because we just had a conversation around this in my last class
mhm,
at Mohawk. We were talking about, it was in our Agile project methodologies class. And so we were talking about delivery.
mm,
And so you've got the Agile mindset, which is, you can take that into any delivery model. And then you've got the frameworks. I think it comes down to how you are running your product delivery. And so
yeah.
when we were comparing Kanban to Scrum, and so that opened up a conversation about the challenges with Kanban and how you can get into a situation where there's no time box because it's
Hmm.
continuous flow. But are you is because there is something with the delivery deadline, right? It does create a bit of a sense of urgency, not to stress the team out, not in that kind of sense, but it's a two, roughly 2 week delivery, and we want to prove that we've delivered something of value. And so it creates that little fire and you can do that artificially. Got committed to 2 weeks, and you've gone to drive towards delivering value. Um, it's a nice to achieve that. And so where I've seen a shift in teams in the past, and some have moved from Kanban to Scrum because they just didn't have that, fire that was lit with the delivery deadline. And so perhaps there's some challenges there in how the team is being run or running itself. The other piece of it, of this other conversation, was about splitting work. So we were
Hmm.
talking about user stories. We were talking about how slicing our work because we were trying to how would we frame like a 2 week iteration of work. And so we were talking about creating a full slice, and somebody was talking, they were running, they work part-time, and they were running, it's a Kanban board that they've got, but they said they did have challenges with delivering on time. And I said, perhaps it's the size of work, right?
Hmm.
Perhaps you're not, if there's an opportunity, if you split that, maybe you need to split your stories down. And so then it's a little bit easier to estimate, and the flow of work might be a little bit faster because they're smaller chunks. So maybe there's that too. So these are all like the practical implementation pieces. So maybe it's not the agile piece that's the problem. Maybe it's we need to tweak how it's being implemented. And I realize like some of these frameworks are a little rigid. And so one of the things I say to students, right or wrong, in my opinion, I think it's right, like borrow from this stuff. Use the tools that
Hmm.
you need. If you need a charter for your project that you're running agile, go for it, right? If you need a certain set of documentation because you are subject to highly strict, financial regulations, please do that because when you get audited, you're going to have
Yes.
the documentation you need, right?
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong in that, in my opinion. It's borrowing from all of these things that we can use, call them whatever you want as far as the frameworks, but that's the package you put together because it's right for the organization at that time. So long story short, I would say I truly believe in agile delivery. I just think that maybe we haven't gotten it right in some circumstances with how we are running it or have
Yeah.
implemented.
Yeah. The framework works, but then how you implement it, because it's very
Mhm.
unique to each team.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and I feel maturity of the team plays a big role in this too. Like I always tell my team, like these are guidelines. Let's pick up what works for us versus, this is how it's supposed to be on paper. But, each team is unique. Each team brings certain strengths, certain areas where we can, improve. And let's leverage those. Like I like what you also said about documentation,
Mm.
because I've heard this a lot. Like, in the market, it's like, oh, agile documentation, that means you guys don't follow agile. But that's not the case. Like if like it's a regulatory thing and you need to put it for
Mm.
audit purposes, you got to do it.
Yeah,
But doesn't mean that you're not agile. It's just
right.
using the framework unique to your situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's it's really nurturing the relationships as well. This may come back to our product owner and even Scrum Master role, which I know is another role that's kind of under
Hmm.
threat.
Yes.
But it's somebody keeping their eye on the relationships outside of the team. And that would
Yes.
be our executives, that would be our support team from an infrastructure perspective. Like it's really cultivating and understanding the needs of those individuals, because they're all going to be different, and how do we work together and bring the individuals along on the journey, because there's a lot of executives who may not have, especially if it's a new transformation, they may not have worked in an agile model
Yeah.
before. And what works in the previous way, like an agile or waterfall delivery, is very different. And so how do we behave, right? What are our expectations? And that is absolutely realistic as far as asking those questions.
Mhm.
And so I think I think the executives sometimes get maybe left out. We
Yeah.
do lots of training for the people in the squad, but we don't maybe do the right introduction and training for the executive team. And I don't think it
Hmm.
has to be time consuming. I think it's just making sure that everybody is connected into how this thing is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel relationships is such a key, right? Like, we also do a lot of team building. We do a
Right.
lot of relationship building within the teams, but not so much with the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what tips would you give to somebody who wants to build relationship with
Mhm.
stakeholders, but then again, everybody's busy, and especially today with hybrid model, it's
Mhm.
difficult to just book coffee chats, right? Or like when you're in office, it's just easy to walk over. So,
Yeah.
any tips that you can share to enhance those stakeholder relationships?
Right. I think the key is, and I say this a lot, meeting people where they're at. So
Hmm.
trying to understand what they're going through and doing asking a lot of questions and really listening to the answer. How are things going in their world? How are they using this product? What are their customers experiencing, if this is a stakeholder or partner that's connected to the customer? If it's technology, what's happening? So really trying to understand and keep tabs on the landscape so that we understand, and we can make good decisions when we're planning out the work and the product and assessing whether what we've built is the right thing. And I think it's also being open to some level of conflict. We're not always going to get along. And so how do we have healthy conflict in order to reach the right solution? And I know, like, the team puts their heart and soul into delivering these items, so we have to be really respectful of that. There's that,
Hmm.
I built this. So it's not necessary. So I think there's a lot of kind of coaching from inside the team. It's not about us, it's not about necessarily questioning the product or how it's built. It's about really addressing the customer needs. And we need to maybe shift something in order to address the customer needs. So kind of, if there's an opportunity to lead with why, that's, I think, a helpful thing, and it helps people disengage from that emotional attachment to what they've built to truly seeing the, pragmatic side of how this is going to be used and where we might have opportunity to make it even better.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that why is so critical, and also the number one challenge with this whole um, uh, operating model today is that the customer is not in the room, and we
No.
are building something for them. So it becomes so critical to know your customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like we get emotionally engaged into it that I built this and therefore I'm not going to change it or not go in a different direction. But does that really bring value to the customer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's so critical, which sometimes we forget, and it's always good to bring that back. Okay, let's bring the customer in. I
Yes.
also read somewhere, I think it was Jeff Bezos who used
Okay.
to right, keep a chair in the conference room which was called like the customer's chair, so
Mm-hmm.
that when there's conflict, it's like okay, what does that person, the customer,
Mm-hmm.
want? How will they benefit? I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But talking about teams, how team retention is good, like how do you manage that? And I know you've done some great job and great work in retaining some of the great teams, so if you could share anything about team retention with us.
Sure. Yeah, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we're never going to have 100% retention, and that's
Yes.
healthy. That's healthy because
Yeah.
sometimes we just need to move on to another opportunity or try a different company, and so we're not looking for 100%, but we are looking for a high percentage. And so I think I've managed that by being consistent with one-on-ones and
Mhm.
creating an environment where there can be total open feedback on both ways. And so being open myself, and feedback's hard. I mean, I'm the first to admit, like, it's like, okay, give it to me, right? Like, it's hard, but oh, do I appreciate it? Maybe not in the
Mhm.
moment if it's something
Yes.
really tough, right? Maybe not in the moment, but it's being open to that, to hear, oh, okay, I missed the mark on that, right?
Mhm.
Or I, could do something a little bit differently as a leader in this area, right? And I think so. Recognition is a big one, and understanding how people like to be recognized. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that do not, especially in technology, that do not like public recognition.
Yes.
And so it's being respectful of that, but
Yeah.
finding the way that they do, and taking the time to to commend people. And a lot of times it's just one to one. I noticed this, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think the feedback is a big one, and having the courage to share something that might be difficult. And the number of
Mhm.
times that I've had people thank me for that is really surprising. And then also it's doing it in a way where it's about a behavior or it's about a result, and observing that as separate from the person. So
Yes.
we are not our behaviors, we are not our results, we are separate. And so how do we raise this in conversation in a way that does separate the two? And I think that it's challenging to do that, but it's really, comes down to choosing words very carefully, and perhaps even calling it out to say, this happened, and I want you to know, this is not I think I have, high respect for you, or whatever you want to say, as far as the person, as a person. And so how do we work together to get a different result?
Mhm.
The next time we have a situation like this, or, whatever the circumstances are. So I think it really is about keeping those one-on-ones. I do them weekly, and that to me is really, really important. Even if you have nothing, I mean, there's got to be something to say, right? But even if there isn't really very much to say, there's always something that comes out of those,
Mhm.
and it gives the team member a forum for one-to-one conversation, even if you're talking, just casually about life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and
What
then
would you say if somebody has multiple team members, right? Then it becomes like, okay, we'll do it bi-weekly or we'll do it monthly. Um, or maybe it's just what works for both parties.
I still believe in one to weekly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So even if you like, I mean, when I think of when I was a BSA practice manager, there were at least 35 people on the team. They fluctuated. It went up to almost 40. I still did one-on-ones. We had to do
That's
them
amazing.
every 2 weeks. I did them. I would have preferred, and then some people we would meet weekly just because of various reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, every week, every other week. And if I could have done them weekly, I would have. But
Yeah.
that size of a team, I mean,
Yeah.
that's an unrealistic size.
35 is a lot. Like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh. Like, how
yeah.
would you even slot one-on-ones in a week?
Yeah,
35.
it was a
Yeah.
lot, but I truly believe in one-on-ones, and
Yes.
I think that should be top priority.
Yeah.
That is, when leading a team, that is the number one priority each week. Which
Yes.
sounds, some people would be like, really? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, especially if you want to retain people.
Yeah. I love that because I've seen people just cancel it
Yeah.
like 5 minutes before, and maybe the other person joins and not be aware that it was canceled. It does shake up your confidence from being a person who's reporting to somebody who's constantly doing that. And even if you get that first 10 minutes or 5 minutes, just that time with the person you report to makes a lot of difference, right?
Yeah.
In many aspects, in the direction that you're going, is that even right? Or maybe you need to pivot,
Yeah.
or even like personal feedback, or maybe something you must be going through and you need to share with your manager that, this is going on in my personal life and therefore I cannot
Mhm.
take on some of the load or whatever. Um, Having said that, I also feel, recognition you talked about, retention is so linked with recognition, I feel. But also, recognition is like just like a love language, like everybody's recognition language is very different.
Mhm.
Because as you said, especially in IT, like some people don't like the frills and the balloons and,
Mhm.
the big exposure, but, just one on one.
Yeah.
Even making it more specific. I was reading this book which talks about, just don't say, oh, you did a great job, but just you did a great job with that particular project or in that moment.
Mhm.
That lands so much better, and you will see
Yes.
such enhancement in their performance and moving forward also if you keep doing that.
Right.
So
And it's
yeah.
great that it's specific. So then,
Hmm.
that, because we do lots of things throughout the day, throughout the week. And so if you're not specific, it
Yes.
might actually lead to a decrease in productivity, or in like, because you might not know what you did that was great, and maybe you're doing some
Right.
things that aren't great.
And then also I feel some team members need more support, some team members are more independent, and
Yes.
as managers it's very important to recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
It's true. Especially if you're
Yeah.
working with developers. I learned that. Do not interrupt their flow. Oh, I just have a question. I just have a question. Oh my gosh. So I've learned, don't do that to anybody who's in that kind of space, or creative, or they could be content design. Don't
Yeah.
interrupt them. So it's like, save up your questions, and then have a conversation. So
Mhm.
yeah, that we were susceptible to that, or let me say, I was susceptible to that when we were in an open environment. So in one
Mhm.
organization, we were all just sitting wide open. So it's so easy to just like lean up the desk, but
Yeah.
now you've interrupted them and the person over there because you're talking, right?
Yeah.
And so I really, bite my tongue, just write it. I just saved it all up.
Yeah.
So I agree. There's like everybody's got different needs, and it's understanding how do we just recognize that and facilitate
Yeah.
day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Let's talk a little bit about, I know you also were a director level at one point.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people seeking that position, right? So what advice would you give to people who aspire to reach to that level?
I think so. So a couple of things. So we can set the vision. Um, and this is true for anything. We set a vision, but we don't necessarily know what the exact path will be to get
Hmm.
there. So be open to opportunities, all opportunities, because you never know where they're going to lead. Also, I think truly understand, I mean, this would be with for any role, truly understand what you're stepping into. And so, like my husband and I were just talking about this on the weekend. Like, as soon as you step into management, your schedule is really not your own. Like, if, in my opinion, is like if you are managing and leading in the way that like I kind of the standards I have for myself. So like the door or the virtual door needs to be open, right?
Yeah.
If something happens, like I want people to be coming to me. I want, if you need my help, I want you to feel like you can come, which means that
Hmm.
I may just have to put aside something. I
Yeah.
maybe need not, I like lunch may be late, or I might have to just run and quickly get something and then come back because like you need to support the team.
Yeah.
And so know what you're stepping into and what the expectations are. And so that I think is a really, really key thing. Um, so there's a little element of luck, which people don't want to necessarily hear all the time, but and that doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. It means that the timing might be, or the path might be slightly different. And
Hmm.
so if you're in a particular organization, the higher you go up the ladder, the less roles there are. So
Yeah.
the opportunity from just a role perspective, the head count needs to be there. And that may mean that if that's a critical achievement in your path and you really want to get there as soon as possible, you may need to step to another organization. Uh,
Hmm.
and the other thing is like a director in the market, it means different things in different
Hmm.
organizations. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so the bigger organizations, it can be more challenging to get into those roles um, because of like the scope of the role may be actually larger than a director in a startup or another size organization. So there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
Because once you're into that role or level, whatever it is, I mean, let's face it, it does add that to your resume, and
Hmm.
it does soften the path, or soften you make it easier, I guess, to get into future roles at that level. So
Yeah.
so there's some strategy to that. And I think so there's I've always led with how can I help, right?
Hmm.
How can
Love
I help?
that.
What can I do to help this organization? And maybe it's because I've had, my own businesses in the past, and I'm very, aware of the financials and what's involved. I've always operated in a way like if I'm spending money, I'm spending it like it was my own, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a different attitude. And
Yeah.
um, so I think, that plus how can I help is really how I've always conducted myself, and it's turned out quite well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I'm trying to think of what other advice to offer in that area. Yeah, and I don't know that I always wanted to move kind of up the ladder, but to me, it was also what I was doing. And that I
Mhm.
needed to feel, and I still do, um, especially now, like I'm kind of blazing a, second career. It's like, it really is, what value am I delivering? I need to feel like I'm doing something important.
Yeah.
And so that to me is important. Maybe not to everybody. Everyone's drive and motivation is different, but that is a really big thing. And that I would say was of higher value than reaching a certain title level. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe I could have gone faster if I had, a different perspective, but it was important to me that I guess kind of aligned with the team and
Mm-hmm.
feel like, I think leadership also, like just wanting to contribute and um, help as many people in the
Yes.
organization as
Yeah.
well. I think that's another one. So it's a bit fragmented of an answer, but I think those are kind of the key things that come out to my mind.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. And I feel, especially after COVID, I've seen like there's been a lot of shift in the mindset, right, of people where the titles may be important to some folks still, but there's been a shift in what that means also, like what value you're bringing. Like
Mhm.
I rather have a lower title, but then if I'm bringing great value to my team and great value to customer, I stay there. Versus, somebody may be very happy doing something else just outside a corporate world, and that's fine too, right? Like
Yeah.
it's very, again, it's become very unique to versus when my parents' generation the director and VP level was like the big deal.
Yes.
But today, a person could be operating, um, like be a just a simple YouTuber, and YouTubers are great, but would just be happy doing that.
Right.
Don't want any titles, and that's good too because that's what brings them happiness, and that's what
Right.
that's their way to bring value to the world.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that you raise happiness. That is so critical, right?
yes,
We spend a lot of time at work, and
hmm
what makes you happy? And I don't
yes,
think until I kind of left the corporate world, I truly sat down and contemplated that, you
hmm
know, and that's a big journey in itself, especially if you've kind of had that focus,
yeah,
achieve, achieve, achieve. Okay, but is that making you happy? Right.
right,
And
right.
so we spend a lot of years at work, and especially I say that to anybody early in their career.
hmm
Really think about, what do you love to do? What do you love to do? Because there probably is a role there, and it may shift and change over your career. Actually, I guarantee that with all of the technology
hmm
changes that are coming,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
It's But what is it you love to do? Because that's got to be at the core. Because
Absolutely.
titles and money and, it at the end of the day, it really can't buy happiness.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So in agreement with that. But having said that, it's a good segue into what advice would you give your 25-year-old self in addition to what
Mm.
just you shared? And if there's something you could go back and change, would you want
Mhm.
to change it?
Okay, so I would have just taken the advice I just gave about happiness.
Yes.
And I think I would have, if I was to do it all over again, I would have stayed in school. So I got my bachelor's of economics, but I would have
hmm
stayed in school, I probably would have I've gone the psychologist route, the path that I think would have been very interesting. I might have gotten into education and teaching earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So not that not that I begrudge the path that I took by any means.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
have had an enormous number of experiences, some good, some very challenging, and that's how I have become who I am today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think the key is, and I try to talk about this in my teaching now, is like blaze a trail, create a
Mm-hmm.
crazy vision that you
Yeah.
want to achieve, and like let's let's do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't put any barriers up. In this world now, I mean, we can do so many things, so many
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah.
And so it's just go for it.
How do you see like you're a mom,
Mhm.
you have your family, plus you had such a brilliant career. So like how do you manage all that? Like work-life balance is such
Mhm.
a challenge, especially for moms,
Yes.
and living with the mom guilt. I am guilty of that too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anything you can share with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like I say was in the past because part of the reason I'm in the current state and working, pretty much part-time right now is because of kids. And my husband is in a big job, let's call it that. And it just can't work with both of us. And so we'll get back there, but I think it was the realization that um, you know, that we needed to be able to kind of to manage, but that's not necessarily, doable for everybody. It certainly wouldn't have been something that we could have done when our kids were small. And so it was a big juggle. I think I can't say that I did it right. Honestly, like I look back and I think it's those little moments of trying to figure out how to be, if not fully present, 95% present,
Yeah.
because those
Yeah.
are the ones that really, really matter. And and so I spend a lot of time where my brain was elsewhere. And yeah, I've got guilt for that. I definitely have regrets. And so maybe it comes back to self-care, which is
Yeah.
something, honestly, I had to learn later in life. If there's advice there for a 25-year-old self, it would have been that. Take care of yourself first. And it's not selfish, it's
Mm.
about how you show up for the rest of the world. And so I didn't do that. And I think it doesn't take a lot of time. But it's intentional, and it's taking that time each day to figure out what we need and really listen to our needs. And I think there's a lot of us that just kind of just don't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
and so I think if I'd been able to do that better, maybe I'd still be in a big job, right? So maybe it's
Yeah.
that. And my way of coping and managing is the current, situation. But maybe, reflecting back, if I had started even before kids, right, that practice of self-care and really listening to my own needs. And I think here's the other one. This is something I'm learning. I'm still learning this. Boundaries, setting
Yes. Oh my God.
boundaries,
So
right?
tough.
And it's
It's
not
so tough.
necessarily saying no, it's just saying,
It's very tough.
okay, so maybe that might not quite work, but how about this? And coming up with a third option, right?
Yeah.
But the boundaries are a big one. I definitely did not do that. I
Mhm.
thought to be successful in my career, I needed to just say yes to everything. And that was a mistake. So because at the end of the day, you put yourself last. And that's not good for anyone. That's not good for anyone.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Yeah. I'm guilty of a couple of those things too. Like I feel I put myself last.
Mhm,
Self-care comes last.
mhm.
And I like the boundaries advice, it's so critical. Like I don't know why, but we're not built that way, right? Like that have safe, clean boundaries, it will
Mhm.
just help everyone. Take
I
care of
agree.
yourself first, it'll take care of everybody else too. But
Absolutely.
somehow it's like we just shove everything else under the carpet, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, how much can you push your body, right? Like how much can you push your
Mhm.
mind
That's it.
without caring for it? Yeah,
And
great
it's
advice.
amazing. It can be a little bit like nerve-wracking to start that, but
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
practice that grows, and it's fascinating to see how the world responds. So I
Yeah.
challenge anyone who struggles with this, pick something, pick some relationship, and just instead of, pause before you say yes, because that's all what you always do, pause and think, how would I really like to answer this? How would I really like to see this unfold, and present that? And it's fascinating because what happens is it's a ripple effect. So it's not the one-time transaction.
Hmm.
People remember that, and they
Yeah.
will hold that boundary going forward, most people. So it's fascinating to see. And then it becomes that's a confidence builder. So this is something that I is very fresh with me, and I have to say it's working well.
Yeah. Wonderful. Let's talk about your new venture, though it's not that new, I since 2022, but if you could share anything about that and how you see it growing, what vision you have for it.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm kind of on like I said, second career path, and I think I've been kind of testing stuff, and I would say I really, it was I haven't really kind of ventured out until it was like June of last year, so like June of 2023. I kind of
Mhm.
had conversations before and trying to see what would stick. I'm coming into this in a kind of a tumultuous market. And so I kind of set out to do the coaching path. Interesting, I did not realize how saturated the market is with coaches, and also given just the climate,
Mhm.
it's been a challenging path, but this is where I kind of come back to being open to opportunities of all different shapes and sizes and how they come at you. I never thought I would be teaching in the at the college level, and I am teaching 2 classes at Mohawk, and that's so exciting for me. It's been incredibly rewarding, and speaks to my creativity because I can, dabble in curriculum design, which has been I've loved every minute of it. It's more time than I thought I thought it would be, but it's like honestly, I've loved every minute of it. So there's something right there, right? I didn't know I was going to go the education path, but I'm going to pursue it and see where it goes. And so yeah, so it's very much about trying to share the lessons that I've learned, and they're not all good stories. I use a lot of examples in my class where there are things that I or my team have done. We could have done better.
Mhm.
And it's you only know that by going through it and
Yes.
learning it. And certainly when an agile transformation, you don't know how to be agile until you just kind of make some mistakes and realize how we do this. And so I love being able to share that, and with the career management class, being able to help individuals either pivot to a new career in new location, new country. Like it's
Mhm.
very exciting, and I get to kind of feel like I'm part of their journey and helping in some way,
Yeah.
hopefully. So yeah, so we'll see where it goes. And I've got I'm really making an effort to put some emphasis and focus on my books. So I'm really excited about having the space to do that. I feel so grateful for that, and getting out there with my novels and seeing where it goes, cultivating a community, which takes time. So
Yeah,
yeah, I feel really grateful to be a part of this. I'm certainly using my coaching skills, but in a different way. Who knew, right?
yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting, and I think I'm really excited to see where this year goes.
That's wonderful. And we'll share all the links in the comment below
Thank you.
so with your site and your books, and hopefully people can leverage.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate it.
Having said that, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And looking forward to many more ventures together in future.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.